you that have heard me before, I always start with the same introduction. And I actually had a gentleman yesterday say to me, I remember when you came to our club and I remember that first line that you said, and I was like, then at least he remembered that, right? At least if he only remembered the first line, it must have been a good one. And I do have the honour and privilege of speaking and sharing my story in a lot of different places, some brothels and some churches, Rotary conferences, I go to high schools, I speak to politicians. My story goes in newspapers and in magazines, and last year I was in the Queensland finals for Australian of the Year. Unfortunately, I lost out to thank you. I lost out to the very incredible Chinese ballet dancer, Li Swing Sing. So that's fantastic, and that's good. I've learned how to say his last name, which is even more awesome. But I always share, in any environment that I'm in, the same story, the same Heart for Hope message. And I share from my heart, and I share my story. And so I'm going to do that again today. So for those of you that have heard me before, you'll know the bit that I'm about to say. But I say, hi, I'm Bronwen Healy, I'm 38 years old. I know I look way younger than that. And I'm about to turn 39. I can't wait, I'm excited, I love to be alive. So you'll hear my story and be like, we're really glad she's alive as well. So I'm 38, looking way younger than that. And the first time that I ever said that, I was in an elite private boys' school in Brisbane. And my book, Trophy of Grace, which isn't available outside, but you can pre-order in case I forget to tell you later, had just come out, and it tailors my life story from brothels to churches, and it shares my heart. And so I was in this elite private boys' school, partly thinking, a little bit like I am here, what on earth am I doing here? Except to inspire, except to encourage. And even back then, what I was doing in that boys' school was helping them reset and helping them recharge and helping them start from scratch, which is what I'm doing here. And I remember this young man in the back row put his hand up and he said, excuse me, miss, you look 21. And I was like, that is a lie, straight up. And unfortunately, when I was 21, I was a messed up drug addicted prostitute. And he kind of went pale, and I thought, well, good thing I know CPR, if necessary, I can use it. And the response that came out of my mouth, I thought, you know what, if I was taking notes on my own message, I'd write that down. That was really good. I said to this young man in this room full of 300 elite private schoolboys, my past is not my future. And what I've done is not who I am. And as I said it, I was like, oh, wow, that was good. And imagine if everyone that ever gets to hear my story could get that for themselves. I don't know your story, I don't know your names. I might read your badge and I might forget it later, and I don't mean to. But you know your stories. You know what you came in here with to this conference. You know, I mean, you guys have called it Control-Alt-Delete. I didn't call it that. So you guys know that it's time for a reset. It's time for a restart. And that's what I needed in my life. So I'll tell a bit about my life story, and then I'll go into the Hope Foundation, and then I'll tell you if or how you could help, and then we've got a PowerPoint. I'm going to save it right to the end, because as I said to my friend that's here with me this weekend, I'm happy to speak in crowds of thousands of people, and I do. But I'm not very good with PowerPoint presentations, and I forget to press clickers. So we're going to throw to Craig right at the end, and we're going to give you the whole package, a visual package of what it is that I share with my words. Is that okay? To do it that way?
We'll get Paul to help you.
Yeah. Between me and Paul, it's really safe for me to keep this Hope Foundation slide up there. Is that all right? At least it'll remind you what it is that I'm here to talk about. So my story goes, I was raised by parents who loved me. At the age of 13, we moved from Melbourne to Brisbane. I thought we were moving to the promised land. I thought I'd get to go to Dreamworld and SeaWorld every day. Unfortunately, I had to go to school. And at the age of 13, when I went to, it was an elite private girls' school, I started to question myself. Who am I? What am I doing here? And then in grade 10, they start to ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? Now, I never would have said this. I never would have said, oh, I might start a charity and go and speak to different people all about my story for all of the days of my life. But they started to say, well, what are you passionate about? And I love writing, which is good because I write books. And I like to talk, which is good because I do that all the time. And so they started to try and lead me towards a certain direction. And I'm a little bit creative in my thinking, which is, I should be good at PowerPoints. And I said to them, you know what, I'm going to make movies and go to Hollywood. And they were like, okay, we don't really have that in our scheme. We don't have film and TV here. And so I said, well, I'll find a school that does have film and TV. And so, did I lose a mic or 2 mics or one? The lot.
We can hear you.
Good thing I'm really loud and the mum of 3 little daughters. No. What should I do? I'm going to look to Paul.
I'm Paul Caloran, I'm 53. Telecommunications consultant. Bronwen, do you want to use these ones?
Come over there.
It's okay now. It's okay.
Stay here.
It's okay.
There's no camera on this one. So.
They fixed it. You're amazing. See? This is what I said. Thank you. I said to them before, the thing with technology, when it works, nobody really mentions it because you just like, it's an expected thing that happens. But when something goes wrong, you're the bad guys, but you're not. You're amazing. Thank you. So, where was I? Making movies and going to Hollywood. So they said they didn't have film and TV at the school, find a school that did, found a school that did, told my parents about it. And my parents said to me, no, there's gangs there and drugs there. And I remember sitting at the table and saying to my parents with my head on a tilt and giant puppy dog eyes. Now I have 3 small daughters that I solo parent and they're not allowed to put their heads on tilts with me or use giant puppy dog eyes because it's destructive basically. And so I'm sitting at the table and I put my head on a tilt and I used my giant puppy dog eyes and I said to my parents, I know how to say no to drugs. And my dad's response was, you also know how to say yes. And I was like, but I'm not going to. So against their better judgment, and now I'm a parent, I totally believe in better judgment. I'm a fan of it, actually. I think it's fantastic and powerful. And so I went to this school against their better judgment, and I did. I scraped through grade 11 and 12, saying no to drugs in my own strength. I don't need to smoke pot to be creative. They probably taught them how to use PowerPoints, I don't remember. It was a long time ago. And so I get right to the end of grade 12 and someone offered me some marijuana to smoke some drugs. And I said, you know what, I deserve a treat. And at the time I thought it was a treat. I was 16 years old. And so I tried pot, and the next day I smoked it again, and the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that. I knew I had the grades to get to university, so that dream of movies and Hollywood was still somewhere within reach. And then I barely scraped through my first year at university because I decided that after pot I wanted to try other things. So I went on to try what they call party drugs. And I tried speed and ecstasy and acid trips and started to fry my brain. And then in the beginning of my second year at university, I fell in love. Please note the inverted commas. I'm glad I still have the camera on, these mics. I fell in love with what I knew was love, with a guy who was a heroin addict, and everyone said to me, you're going to end up a heroin addict. And I was like, wow, thank you for the votes of confidence. People, no, I won't. And unfortunately, at the age of 18, I tried heroin for the first time, and within 2 weeks was using heroin every day. I was raised a good kid. I made some bad choices. I now go into high schools and wherever else will have me with a message for the kids, for the youth. Every choice has a consequence. And some kids don't know what a consequence is because they haven't been taught. It hasn't been exampled to them. Their parents haven't shown them, or they haven't been a part of a group like the Rotary to learn what it is to make good choices, to learn what it is to have good consequences. And so I go in with that message. I was on heroin for 6 years, between the ages of 18 and 24. You'll see a photo later and be like, wow, okay. Because hopefully, when you look at me today, if I didn't say I used to be a messed up drug addicted prostitute, you wouldn't guess. I've got to hope that, anyway. Because I hope that the life-changing choices that I've made in the last 14 and a half years, since at the age of 24 I walked into a doctor's surgery and I shared with him my very colourful life history and drug history, because those 6 years on drugs saw me grow drugs, sell drugs, obviously buy drugs, do petty crime, turn to prostitution to pay for my drug habit. Now, again, when I was 15, I wanted to make movies and go to Hollywood. I never would have thought that I'd be selling my body and soul to strangers for money to buy drugs. And so here I was at the age of 24 telling this doctor my history. And this doctor just looked at me and he said, I don't think drugs are your problem. And I was like, either he wasn't listening or he's really rude, or both. And he said, I think you've got a hole in your soul only God can fill, and you need to make some life-transforming choices, not just for yourself, but for all of the other people that will ever come after you. And I was like, I can't even breathe for myself. So I don't know what he's talking about, all of these other people that will ever come after me. So I went to rehab at the age of 24. I was 41 kilos, which you'll see in a photo later. And I looked like death warmed up. At the depths of my addiction, I was using $1,000 worth of heroin a day and having to do the work to get the money to get the drugs. So I go to this rehab at the age of 24, thinking to myself, really, I just hope I can stay alive. I just hope I can stay alive. And so 6 weeks into the program, they tell me, basically, that the only, they taught me how to live, they taught me how to function. When I was a drug addict, I used to wake up in the mornings and just roll over and take drugs or look for money for drugs. And these guys were like, you need to have breakfast. Breakfast is good. You guys would have worked that out at 6:30 this morning. I worked it out at 8:30. And then it's, you need to have a shower. You need to get dressed. I used to, when I was a criminal, prostitute, drug addict, if my clothes got dirty, I'd throw them out and go and steal new ones. I was a 24-year-old baby, and these guys taught me how to live again. 6 weeks into the program, I did become a Christian, and that did radically change my heart, my mind, my thinking. That was 14 and a half years ago. Literally the day after that happened for me in August 1999, I said to the people that ran my rehab, I just want to use my past to help change other people's futures. And she was like, just calm down. Just catch your breath. Just you get well first. So I did the 9-month rehab program, and I got well. And I got to the end of it, and I still said, I just want to use my past to help change other people's futures. I wanted my past to count for something. I didn't want those years and those days and that pain to be wasted. I wanted to use my pain for someone else's purpose. And so 12 years ago, I wrote a book called Trophy of Grace, which is about to have its 10th anniversary print run, which is super exciting for me because I remember when I wrote it, thinking to myself, I don't know if this is just therapy and I'm just getting this story out of me for myself, or whether or not this will ever help anyone. If it helps one person, then it's happened for a reason, right? And so when that book came out, people started to say, if this worked for you, can it work for me? I was like, I don't know. And so I started to try and find other services that I could refer these people to. But there was no specific organisation that we could find, that I could find, that was coming alongside women wanting life change from addictions and or the sex industry. And so I said to a friend who was a lawyer, what if we make one? And he said, that's really hard work. And I was like, okay, I don't mind hard work. And he said, it's going to take a lot of bravery to start a charity. And I was like, I'm pretty brave. He said, and it's expensive. And I was like, oh, that is an issue, money is an issue. And he said, okay, he spoke to his partners and they did our constitution pro bono. I remember getting the phone call and him telling me, we're going to do your constitution pro bono. And I was like, oh, that's amazing, what is that? It just sounded good, And he said, it's free. And I was like, that's my favourite word in the whole dictionary. And he was like, okay. So that was, we turned 7 this year as an organisation. In that time we have posted, it's been mostly miracles and lots of bravery and lots of awareness raising, telling my story in the hope that if there's one person in this room that's touched and challenged or inspired, you are community changers. That's who you already are. So when they asked me to come and speak at this conference, I'm like, I can just come and hopefully encourage and inspire who you are and what you're already doing. I've been to enough Rotary clubs and Rotaract meetings and Probus meetings to know that you guys are world changers. And so, we do the same thing. We're changing communities. We're changing the world one woman at a time. Through a message, you are loved, you're valued, and you're created with a purpose. I hope that every person that ever hears my story would know that. I definitely hope that all of the women that I will ever cross paths with will leave with a really great, deep knowing that somebody loves them, that somebody cares. In 2006, the year before Hope Foundation officially launched, we started to host Valentine's Day outreaches, where we gathered the women and they got chocolates and flowers and cards, and we took them to a fancy place for lunch. We still host that event this year. We had, our Valentine's Day event, and it was you're sitting in a room with these 35 brave and courageous women. These brave and courageous women choosing to say yes. The Hope Foundation in the last 7 years has probably supported in and around through events and through one-on-one support and through mentoring, probably close to 300 or 400 different people. And that might be the women, that might be their children, that might be their parents who have also been affected by the addictions. And when the women choose to make good choices, their kids are affected, their parents are affected. So we're creating generational change. So the Hope Foundation 2.5 years ago opened our first drop-in space at Mount Gravatt. And when we opened it, it was basically me and one part-time case manager. Now we have 2 full-time case managers, 1 almost full-time support worker, a part-time executive assistant to the organisation. And at the beginning of last year, as you'll see in a slide in a moment, we started the year with around 60 women that we were supporting. And I was like, oh, wow, because I remember thinking if it's just one, then my whole past has happened for a purpose. So when I was like 62 or 63 women that we're supporting, these women that are choosing life change from addictions and or the sex industry, it was like, wow. And we ended the year with over 130. So we doubled our number. I'm not very great with maths or PowerPoints, but we doubled our numbers of women that are choosing life change, women that are choosing to say yes. So in my last 30 seconds before we skip to a PowerPoint, how can you help us? I've raised awareness today. Now you know that we exist. You didn't know that before, and now you know. We do have a stand outside. You can come and grab brochures, talk to us. We'll lovingly encourage you to keep doing what it is that you're already doing. Because every time I get to go to another Rotary meeting, I meet inspiring people, changing lives in their own community, but changing the world. I remember getting my first certificate to say that I just paid for 25 polio vaccines. And I was just like, I just did that? I just shared my story for 20 minutes and we did that. So together, which is what it's all about, we're changing the world. So be encouraged that what you're doing is exactly what you need to be doing. Control, Alt, Delete, reset, restart. I'd suggest to do it every day. I kind of wake up every day and go, what's going to happen today? And today included this. So I'm privileged and I'm honoured that today included this. Thank you to every person that chose to invite me. I hope that you've been encouraged and inspired. And we're going to flick to Craig and he's going to show you the amazing PowerPoint and the fairly terrifying photo. Thanks.